metal, blah, 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 blah. If I looked at the search term like women's pink rubber coated insulated water bottle, like that's my exact product. Now, the more specific you get to the product, the more specific the search is, the lower your search volume is going to be. So what we always look to do on product launches is like we try and find the intersection between good search volume and good to us is like maybe even a couple thousand, depending on the budget, that also have really good relevancy to the product. Because what you're trying to do is you want to get in front of your exact shoppers. So example would be insulated water bottle is going to be really expensive and not super specific to my product. Like it's kind of specific, but not really specific. I'm trying to say like, okay, where can I start getting super specific to my product, but it's going to have enough search volume that I can get the sales volume that I need. So I would focus more on that versus that I would looking at only search volume. A bit of a technical answer here is we don't quote move them, meaning we're not going to pause the existing keywords. We're simply going to launch them in another match type. Again, make sure to keep the bids lower. Amazon actually, if you read their recommendations, they recommend keeping bids lower on broad and phrase match, even lower than the exact match. When we would launch those is honestly really dependent performance of the account and availability of the budget. So if you launch a keyword in exact phrase and broad, so you have 50 keywords, right? And you launch them in exact phrase and broad, you technically have, 150 keywords that you've launched. And the potential of broad and phrase to spend could be quite high. So again, you just want to make sure it makes sense. It seems super simplistic, but if you are in a phase where you're struggling to control total ACoS and ACoS, to fix those two numbers, it really means that you have to lower down your ad spend with ideally little to no impact of the total sales or the ad sales in the case of ACoS. If you introduce a whole, again, those 50 keywords in exact phrase and broad, and those you probably need to test and optimize the bids, etc., you're introducing a lot of additional ad spend into the account. So you do want to be aware of that and be careful with that. So that's kind of a benchmark that we use. But overall, I would say, I don't know if I would have like a certain time frame or a frame which I would hold back on. It really is dependent on the performance of the account. Another good question, which best bid strategy for phrase and exacts when you move? So again, we don't really move them. We would simply launch them in addition. We like to separate them by campaign as well. Kind of gives us a little bit more control over, say, budgets for things. Now, as far as the bidding strategy, we're a super huge fan of using mainly dynamic down only. If it is a keyword that we want to ensure that we get impressions for, so for our launch keywords, for our main keywords, for anything we're trying to be aggressive with, we prefer a fixed bidding strategy. It's still going to be the same. It's still going to be pick highly relevant keywords. One other tip is pick keywords that fit within the budget of the account that you're launching. So for instance, if I have a couple $100 a day budget versus $50 a day budget, those launches are actually going to look a little bit different because I can't afford that many clicks on a $50 a day budget. Or if I had a couple $100 or $1,000, I have a lot more room for clicks. So actually, you want budgets to play into your launch strategy. The other thing that you want to keep in mind, do not expect profitability on launch. This is a huge one. There's a lot of people that try and pull back and knee-jerk for profitability right out of the gate. That is not going to happen. The reason why it's not going to happen, and I'll tell you the numbers behind the numbers, is that ACoS is just going to be high on your product launches, and that is a function of two things. One, the aggressive cost per click you have to set to be able to get visibility in the beginning, and two, how low your product conversion rate is going to be, especially if you're launching without reviews. Those two things, once you start to be able to bring your cost per clicks down because you gain momentum or you're optimizing your bids, and then two, once your product conversion rate starts to increase because you're getting those reviews, maybe you're optimizing your listing a little bit more because you've learned more about your target market, that is going to help bring down your target ACoS. So those things, again, conversion rates are going to be low, high cost per clicks. That's actually like the nuts and bolts of why your ads are not profitable, and it's almost unreasonable to expect profitability in the beginning. And that's actually why, if you've ever had a product where you're like, no matter what I do, I cannot seem to bring the ACoS down, I'm struggling here, it's a function of that your conversion rate is remaining low and it's not improving, and your cost per clicks are remaining high and you're not able to improve them due to the market or something else. So again, I would still say pick highly relevant keywords, Also, make sure that whatever keywords that you have fits within your budget. Launch them. Aggressive, sponsored product, exact match, potentially sponsored brand video, exact match if you have the creative. Double down on that for a couple weeks and then start. Hello, and welcome. Bet you didn't think I was going to do it. And for those of you who are not on my LinkedIn, by the way, happy Halloween. I actually posted a poll, so it's not entirely my fault. I am going trick-or-treating with my kids later today, and I said, hey, should I get in the festivities? Should I wear my costume on the live today? Because I have it. What do bananas have to do with Amazon advertising? Absolutely nothing. I had the costume. I waited too long. That's my fault. And so I wasn't able to do a taco. Totally should have done a taco. But 57% of people said, heck yeah, do it. And another 18% said, sure. And another 22 people just wanted to see what everybody else had to say. So that is why I am joining today. So if this is your first time joining in, I'm not always going to be dressed like this every single, although honestly, maybe I should just get a taco costume and say, screw it and do this every single week in some different costume. That would be hilarious. But it's going to be fun today. I'm really looking forward to skimming off of all of the kids' candy tonight. We're going to be going trick-or-treating. I got 6 kids. That means 6 baskets to skim off, which means I'm going to be making bank tonight. So highly looking forward to taking my fair share of taxes for being willing to scoot everybody around the neighborhood. Anyway, so to get into it, welcome. If this is your first time joining in, the way that this works is you ask your Amazon ad questions in the chat. So use the chat to ask your Amazon ad questions. Looks like we have a few questions, so I'll make sure that we get to these. The sooner you can ask your question, the better, because I'll be here for an hour. And what I find pretty much every single week is that I get a ton of, like, a flood of questions at the very end of this. So I'm going to go for an hour, but if we go over, I may or may not be able to stick around. So make sure the sooner you ask the question, the sooner you can get an answer. And we always get some really specific, awesome questions. And which, by the way, who am I and why am I qualified to talk about Amazon advertising is the fact that I'm one of the co-founders of an Amazon ad agency, and we've been doing this for 6 or 7 years, and we have seen all types of things in accounts, from high price to low conversion rate, to supplements, to baby, to clothing has been a really big one for us. So massive amounts of SKUs, and then everything in between, which means I've seen a lot of things in ad accounts. So if you want a perspective on what works best, the more context you can give, the better. All right, so we got some questions in the chat. Let's pop them open. First off, Zane says, hello, Elizabeth. Great to see you. Hope you're well. I'm doing well. I'm gonna see if I'm gonna get sensory overload from this thing tugging at my chin by the end of this hour, but we'll see. It's a dry run for tonight. And the second question is, if you want to get hired by a renowned PPC agency, what skills and experience should you preferably possess? That is a great question. I would say the very specifics and what's going to get you hired is going to be highly dependent on the agency and what they're looking to build for their culture. So some agencies are a little bit more very specific, step-by-step SOP'd. Other ones have more of, they tend to hire a little bit more highly skilled workers, and then have a lot of the strategies in the playbooks, we call a bottom up approach to how we're building out strategies. So we would focus a little bit more on past experience, as well as a good fit with our agency, and the fact that we allow a lot of flexibility and autonomy, but that means that you have to be the person who's going to be able to handle those kind of things. So that's what we're looking for. But if I had to give you, so I would just say it's going to be dependent on your personal strengths and how well those work with what the agency is looking to hire for. But outside of that, if I had to give you some general good things, I would say it would be, one, your conversation, your communication skills. Communication is everything in this industry. And if you plan on working with a team, you really want to make sure that you have great communication skills. And then the second one is going to be analytics skills. So analytics is not just, oh, I noticed that sales went up. It's being able to dive into the numbers and say, okay, not only can I recognize and do I have, sort of the discipline to be able to look into a specific thing and make sure that I'm paying attention, but I don't just want you to pay attention. I want you to be curious and go through and look at why. And then even better, off of that, you want to be able to understand the action steps that need to happen to be able to, pivot from there. And then a big piece of that is going to be communication, because if you're working in a team or you're working with clients, you're not working in isolation, meaning you have someone that not only do you need to understand what's going on, you need to be able to convey to somebody else why something happened, action steps you're taking, or just let your other team members know hey, I could use some help here. So those are the two things that I would focus in on. All right, another good question from Keith. How do we rank for keywords we cannot advertise on? For example, Superman, Batman, Marvel, etc. Is it against terms of service to have these keywords in the back end search terms? That is a great question, Keith. So it is against terms of service to have these types of keywords in your back end. However, it is not against terms of service to advertise on these keywords. Now, how much the algorithm determines that your products are relevant for said keywords will determine your how much impact you're going to have on advertising. If they don't think you're relevant at all, it's going to be really hard to get impressions. And yes, the Amazon ad algorithm does look at your back end keywords to determine if keywords are relevant. But the other thing that it takes into account is and this is getting technical here, but your browse tree node, which is essentially what category and or subcategories are you in and what relevant keywords has the algorithm mapped to those very specific browse tree nodes. That's why you're never going to see product that's say running socks or socks for running or something. It's never going to rank on running shoes. Amazon is not interested of showing you relevant products when shoppers are searching. That doesn't make for a good shopper experience. But if the algorithm deems that it's not a specific one, so for example Marvel characters or something like Superman, Batman, those very generic keywords or very, very broad types of keywords, I highly doubt, just given advertising, you would be able to really gain any traction whatsoever, because one, conversion rates are going to be all over the place for different types of products on these more specific generic terms. However, say you're selling bed sheets, if you were advertising on Superman twin bed sheets for boy, you probably actually have a really good chance of doing that. So what we do in these cases is we'll tack on to see if there's any sort of long tail variations of these that have relevancy in them, and then we'll leverage advertising to go after these. And oftentimes that's a really great way to get placement on those search pages. So just because you don't have something in your back end does not always necessarily mean that you're not going to be able to get advertising impressions for it. It's kind of dependent. So if you want, I would say, hey, test it, run it. I don't think it would be a bad idea. And then just see what kind of results you can get from there. All right. Hey, Elizabeth, hope you're doing well. I am. Thank you for asking. Excited for this evening. We're all really excited for Thursday session. Each time we learn something new, valuable. Awesome. No, I'm really, really glad you're learning these things. Yeah, it's again, I've been doing this for 6-7 years at this point, running the agency. And so, like I said, we've seen so many different scenarios and so many different things. And so my goal is to be able to share those learnings with you guys and help you guys shortcut. So if I learn something through School of Hard Knocks, I don't want someone to have to relearn the same painful lessons. Guidance has been incredibly helpful. Awesome. Yeah. No, looking forward to sharing amazing insights as well. Again, goal of this is, hey, show up. Again, if you're just joining, I'm not always dressed as a banana. I just thought it would be fun for Halloween. And I can say put out a poll on LinkedIn, which, by the way, if you're not following me on LinkedIn, I post daily content, snippets of this information. So like that last tactic I gave, like, hey, just because a keyword is not in your backend doesn't necessarily mean that you can't advertising on it. And yes, you can advertise on keywords that are not necessarily, it would be against terms of service to put them in your listing, but you can actually leverage those in advertising, like those kind of insightful things, which my team is probably not going to be so glad that I am wearing this today, because they're going to have to make a bunch of clips of me sharing Amazon ad advice dressed as a banana, which will be interesting. We'll see if we can get some good click-through rates from that. All right, Keith, is it a good idea to use broad match modifiers? What is the best way to use it? That is a great question, Keith. I would say, so I'm going to preface this by saying like what the updates happen to the algorithm and why broad match modifiers are fantastic. And also sort of an issue that we've noticed in sponsored product ads where they don't always work, which is a little bit frustrating. And so essentially broad match modifiers have always been available inside of sponsored brand ads. Some people had still used them in sponsored product ads, but to be honest, historically, there really wasn't any reason to do that. And the reason being is that the traditional sponsored product ads used to function essentially the same way that modified broad match works. So I know some people who had tested it and I'm like, why are you testing? It's like the same thing. It doesn't really make a difference. So what is a modified broad match? Maybe we should start with that for the listeners. So a modified broad match is putting a little plus symbol in front of an individual root word that you want to ensure is going to appear inside of the triggered search. Now, what might that look like? So running shoes, right? If I put a plus sign in front of running in front of shoes, then the algorithm would have to make sure that running and shoes are contained in whatever search is triggered. Now, for sponsored brand ads, broad match used to, like, historically has always triggered what's called like related searches. So like running shoes might trigger the search term sneakers. Like, is there kind of overlap there? Yeah, kind of, but it's not that sneakers may not perform as well. And so to be honest, we used to just not use regular broad match inside of sponsored brand ads. We would only ever use mostly exact and phrase match. And then sometimes we would use modified broad match if we wanted to like broaden our reach. So it's a little bit different in sponsored brand ads because you have the creatives attached, and oftentimes you'll have creatives that are very specific to specific search pages. And that's why we don't really like to go super broad with those ad types with creatives. We like to make sure that our creatives are hitting the right audience, but that's the sidebar. And then as far as the broad match inside a sponsored product ad, so again, this is the way that traditionally sponsored products had always worked with broad match, is that it always had to contain those individual root words, and it could swap the order of them. It could put words in between or in front or behind, but it had to contain those root words. Well, Amazon did an update to their algorithm. They didn't tell everybody. It was the most horrible way to roll out this. All of a sudden we noticed that like all of these crazy things were happening inside of our search term reports. We're like, all of these searches that should not be triggering are triggering. What do we do about this? How do we, like, what's going on? And everyone was asking the ad rips, and we were reaching out to our contacts and everyone in the industry is like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden Amazon never got back to anybody. By the way, out of everybody that I reached out to, out of everyone that everyone in my circle reached out to in terms of like internal Amazon people, none of us ever got an answer. However, what happened is Amazon just quietly updated their documentation on their website. It's to be honest, it was a little bit crazy. So now if you go into their documentation, actually I have this bookmarked because this is the only place that I've noticed that they actually will update these things, which is like bizarre to me. But if you go in here into their match types and targeting, actually this is new. This is really interesting, this little tag here. But you can look at their manual match types. And so now if you look at broad match, so it says this match types offered your broad exposure to customer search queries. A shopper search query can contain terms in it. Gosh, I can't even read terms in any order. And then also the context of the advertised products. So the keyword itself may not be contained in the customer shopping query. For example, the keyword sneakers may match customer queries such as canvas sneakers, or basketball shoes, or athletic shoes. Notice how or cleats. Can you imagine if you're advertising on sneakers? Like, cleats are a completely different thing. And yet the algorithm, this is literally in their examples, what they're saying, hey, this can trigger. So here's the tip. It says for sponsored brand campaigns, and this will get to I promise I'm answering your question. In sponsored brand campaigns and broad match modifiers to indicate the words that must appear in the customer search queries. So you add a plus symbol before each of the words that you want to appear in the search. So for example, if you use plus kid shoes, then an ad may match for kid sneakers. So it's again, you can see that kids needs to be in the search. Now, here's the thing. So because this has changed both in headline, in the sponsor brand ads, which again, it was always the case. And then it also changed to include, sort of these related keywords that, to be honest, are oftentimes you look at the search terms, you're like, this is not related at all. Why are you wasting my money, Amazon? It was also included in your sponsored product ads. But notice here, it says tip in sponsored brand campaigns. So I would recommend, if you are going to run broad match, it does make sense to use broad match modifiers if you want to be very specific with what you are advertising on. However, what we've observed and what you can kind of infer given Amazon's documentation here is that we've only ever seen broad match modifiers work 100% of the time when they're in sponsored brand campaigns. We've seen quite a few search terms, even with modified broad match and sponsored product campaigns, where that plus symbol, it doesn't always work. So what I would say, should you use broad match modifiers? Yes. I try to give a lot of context on this, sort of this segment. So hopefully that more than answered your question, Keith. Should you use them? Yes. What is the best way to use it when you want to be specific, but just be aware that sponsored product ads doesn't always work all the time. And so what do you do about this? 100%, especially now with the way their algorithm is working, you really, really, really need to make sure that you are keeping up with your negative keywords. It's so important now. So hopefully, that just is helpful. Again, if you guys are finding this helpful, I definitely recommend giving it a thumbs up. That's always great for the algorithm, pushes this out, gets it in front of more people so they too can ask their Amazon ad questions and get very specific answers. All right. Cyrus is saying, nice costume. Thank you so much. This is going to be a fun one. All right, PPC is going to get worse as challenge sellers are offering low price than other sellers. PPC conversion rate affected significantly. How do we manage such a situation? Please guide. Great question. So the main one is going to be your products, more so now than ever, need to be differentiated. You need to be serving up a quality products. How do you identify a quality product? Well, you want to make sure that your listing is top notch and the product itself has something unique. Now, if all you have is a Me Too product, Me Too being somebody can literally go on Alibaba and launch the same 100% exact product today, just slapping a different brand name on it is not going to change anything. So you need to make sure that it's super differentiated. Now, if your product is differentiated, that means that you are targeting a very specific subsection of the market. And that's how you can win in your advertising. So it starts with the product. But if you have a good differentiation, then what you could do is you can specifically target those keywords that speak to that shopper. And then that is how you can make sure that you're advertising. So product and advertising really play together in this. And if you just have a Me Too product, you don't really have a differentiation. To be honest, from a consumer standpoint, and I don't want to knock sellers, right? I don't want to knock anyone who's facing this, because to be honest, when your market completely gets flooded with low price products, it's tough, right? It's really, really tough. And so what you're kind of up against is you need to have a product that really can stand out in the market. And from, like I said, from a consumer perspective, if I'm going to purchase a product and every single item looks exactly the same, pretty much the same product, maybe there's a couple different colors or maybe there's some other sort of appeal, but like in actuality, it feels like if I purchase any of these products, I'm getting the exact same thing. No one seems like a better quality. No one seems like a new take on something. Why would I not go with the lower price item? So really looking at it through the lens of the consumers really, really will help. You got to think of it, how am I best serving the shopper? And then that will help you differentiate in a way that makes sense. All right. Quick question. Hope you're doing well. I am. Thank you for asking. Let's see. You're looking lovely. I appreciate that. I look interesting today, but it's neither here nor there. Does search query performance includes ads data as well, or is it just organic data? This is a great question. So your search query performance data is going to include both advertising as well as like your organic search data. Now, a lot of times what people have asked when they go and like analyze the search query performance, they're like, wait, if I look at my advertising, if I look at my advertising and the orders that I'm getting through a specific keyword, or maybe even I'm going down to a search level, you're like, I'm getting way more orders on this search than search query performance is reporting in total. So why might this be happening? Well, one of the reasons is that search query performance data only includes the last 24 hours of data. It doesn't update. It doesn't retroactively go back and update. Also, search query performance only includes those orders that happen in the search grid. So this pretty much only includes the sponsored product ads and only the sponsored product ads that appear in the search grid. You know how there's those carousels and there's those widgets, like 4 stars and above or recommended or something like that. And you have your headline ad and you have your video ad and all of the above. Well, those are not going to be included in any of the search query performance reports. So yes, does it contain everything? 100%. But the data is not always going to 100% line up. So if you see any like weirdness like that, it's because it's calculated differently. I just have a good question. Perpetual PBC software is good. What I'm not going to say is that it's bad. I'll just say that. I think it works for a lot of people. We happen to have signed a lot of clients because they were using Perpetua and it wasn't working for them. And so they ended up signing with us. So like the demographic that I've interacted with in terms of like sellers who have used it is going to be like 100% skewed, which by the way, like we've gotten sellers who have been using like Quartile, or we've gotten sellers who have been using like other ad platforms. And again, not because those ad platforms are necessarily like bad or don't work for anybody. Like obviously they'd be out of business if they weren't working, but we've kind of seen like the downsides to them, I guess it would be a way to say it. And so one of the things with Perpetual that's very interesting is sometimes it can be hard for like the correct segmentation. So what they do is they have like their test campaigns, and then those test campaigns sort of like pull out searches and then upgrade them to other campaigns. And then what they do is they create a ton of different ad groups. What we found is just for scale, that's not the greatest ad structure. And then the other thing that's kind of interesting, if I remember correctly, from the brands that we've talked to that kind of migrated from that platform, is that the way the budget rules are set up, honestly, this isn't a lot of like fully automated systems where you can't really say like, oh, this is this specific thing. I want to like aggressively go after like this. Like the software just like kind of pushes it all into one like spend bucket per product, and is a little bit harder to get incremental. Honestly, that's with any ad automation platform, if you don't know how to get incremental with it, if you don't know how to leverage the tool to do what it is that you need it to do, there's just this contention. And I've seen that primarily with a lot of like fully automated systems where they're like, hey, let us pick all the keywords, let us do everything, it'll be amazing. What you find that if you use it for any length of time, it stops being amazing. Typically, I'm not going to say it always happens, but so would I personally use it? Like, we've looked into it. We're not going to be using it as an agency, but we also have like our own internal systems that we've been building over the past like 6 years that are phenomenal and get great results. So we don't plan to migrate anytime soon. So I do recognize that I'm a bit biased. I would say I would just talk to them. Like, if you're interested in the software, talk to them and ask all the questions. The most important thing when it comes to any sort of software is going to be, does their ideology and the way that they view and manage and make decisions when it comes to advertising changes, does it align with the way that I'm doing things? And if you can't, I mean, because software is great for automation, but you need to make sure it's doing the things that you want it to. All right, another question on pricing. If one of my clients' product is priced at $26.95 and the product niche is sitting at $12 on average price, how do we advertise and bring in sales with low ACoS? Oof. Hard. The problem that you're going to come up against is that the conversion rates are really low. And so to offset really low conversion rates, what you need is to have a lower cost per click. So your goal is going to be figuring out what search terms in my space have a higher than average conversion rate and a lower than average cost per click. Finding that oftentimes is easier said than done, but really that's the path to making sure you have profitable ACoS. Does sponsor brand ads like display banner or video help with ranking? What I will say is that we've noted that they have less impact than sponsored product ads. I hesitate to say that they have no impact on ranking because I don't think that's the case. However, they do, we haven't noticed as large of an impact. The way I can say this with a lot of confidence, going back to like, I've seen a ton of things, and so let me share my insights with you. Over the course, when Sponsor Brands Video first came out, Sponsor Brands Video has a very high conversion rate. Going back to my answer to a previous question on like, hey, how do I get better ACoS? Well, you have either you have a higher conversion rate or a lower cost per click. If you have both of them, fantastic. And so because there was a lot of brands where they had a very low conversion rate, and so to sort of offset the low conversion rate, what they found is that the Sponsor Brands Video performed the best because it converted the best. And so what they did is that they just continuously like, oh, this is where all the ACoS is coming. Let me put my ad spend here. Let me focus in on this. And what we did is I ran an audit for 3 or 4 brands within the span of a month or two, where over 75% of their total spend was on Sponsor Brands Video ads and sponsored banner ads. And what I found is that every single one of those brands was struggling with ranking. Now, why they're struggling with ranking, I have my personal opinions on that. Is that really to gain a lot in rankings, you need to have a couple things, good conversion rate, good click-through rate, all of those positive signals. But one of the main things is going to be a high order velocity, or just like a lot of orders happening through that one search. Well, the problem with, video ads or banner ads is that the amount of ad inventory or placements that you have is just really small. For example, there's only pretty much one, sometimes 2 ad spots on a search page for Sponsored Brands Video versus, how many ad spots that you possibly have for sponsored product ads. So my personal opinion is it's more a matter of volume than it is like an algorithmic thing. But I've just noticed, so I always want to preface that by saying, I'm not saying don't run these ad types. I definitely think there's validity. There's a lot of powerful ways that you can leverage these ad types. But in terms of impact on rankings, again, I don't think it's 0, but it's minimal. Man, Joseph said we had crazy long ship lead times on our items, including holiday items that really hit our sales. Have you experienced this too? I wish I could say no, Joseph, but yes, what I found is that yeah, ship times are beastly right now. Check-in times, everything's backed up. You know, we're hoping everything is able to get in before the holidays really hit. But yeah, unfortunately, seeing the same thing. He said, is there a good way to compare our conversion rate versus the niche's average? There absolutely is. And this is a great question. So there is 2 things that you can compare yourself to. You can look at it on a category level. So this is going to be aggregated by your brand, and this is going to be aggregated by your category, or you can look at it on a search query level. And I'm going to see if I can pull up. I did a video specifically on this, so I'll make sure that I drop this in the chat as well. But the 2 things that you want to look at is going to be inside of your ad console. It's called brand metrics. Brand metrics will allow you to select your specific brand, and then you could select a category or a subcategory and say, how does now this is going to be all of the products in that brand. How does my brand stack up against competitors in this one specific category? So let me pull open this link right here, and then I'll grab it for you, and then I will share the next one. So it's this one right here, spy on your competitors. So that's the first one, is going to be brand metrics. Again, I'll drop that video link in the chat. But the second one that you can look at is your search query performance report. Now, the search query performance report, what this allows you to do is see, how does my conversion rate stack up? So you can look at click-through rate too, by the way, which is pretty awesome. So we like to look at these 2, click-through rate and conversion rate. How does that stack up? And again, I walk through where to find it, how to look at it, all those good things. But how does it stack up against competitors or averages on this specific search page? So you can look at the search query performance report either broken down by your entire brand, or if you want to look at a specific child ASIN, you can do that as well. And you will actually have to calculate the conversion rate. So Amazon doesn't actually give you the conversion rate broken down in search query performance report. What they do give you is the average orders and the average clicks. So we know that conversion rate is clicks divided by orders. So we can take the amount of clicks, you can divide it by orders. They also give you the search impressions. So you also, again, click-through rate is clicks divided by impressions. So you can look at that as well to calculate, like, hey, what is the average metrics for all competitors that are on this one search query, which is insanely powerful. If you want a really good way to identify rank keywords, that's it. Because really what you need when you go into ranking, again, you need to have high order velocity, but you need to have good performance on that keyword. And so looking at search query performance, saying, like, where do I have a leg up in terms of my click-through rate? Where do I have a leg up in terms of my conversion rate? And then making sure you're being aggressive with your advertising to rank on those things is a really fantastic way to go about it. All right, how do we increase sales on lower ACoS when client's daily budget is $40? It's a brand new product with 12 reviews. On the other hand, the product price is higher than competitors. What's your opinion to get down ACoS? Though I have set up ranking campaigns, but the client is worried about high ACoS. Shoot, that's a rough one. I would say, I mean, again, you're going to need to focus on, where does this product convert well in the market, and where can I get lower cost per clicks? And that's, like, honestly easier said than done. Let me pop open a tool for you that I have that goes into forecasting profitability. Honestly, most likely in this case is going to be setting expectations. A lot of times this happens. This is very common to happen with clients, where a client will request something that may or may not be feasible given, kind of what's available in their market. Now, it's not because the clients, most of the time, hopefully not, not majority of the time, is not because they're really necessarily trying to be difficult. It's because, they're saying, like, hey, this is what it's going to work well for my business. Well, the problem that we've seen is that, again, what you're up against is a tension between what's possible in the market and then what the client's requesting. All right, so I'm going to walk you through this. All right. This is a product forecast. There's a Loom video on how to use this, but basically what you want to look at is what's the product price. So if you said, you didn't say what the product price is. Say the product price is $24 and, you know, given everything, let's say our net profit, that would give us 70. So let's I'm throwing random numbers in here, but we're saying like, hey, what if this product, even if it has like a 50% margin or something, if the product's conversion rate is low, say like 5%, I'm only looking at a net profit of 13%. My break even cost per click is only going to be 65 cents at this point. And so the lower your conversion rate, like say you had a 2%, look, I can only afford 26 cents in clicks. And so really what you're up against is a couple things. One, the higher price point, which my guess is that it's going to be a much lower conversion rate, which means you can't afford as high of cost per clicks. But the second problem is that with a low budget like this, like say if we had, let's go back to where we have like 91 cents average cost per click. This also depends on what's in the market as well. But if we have a $40 budget, well, $40, if we take this and we divide it by 91 cents, we can only afford 43 clicks, which means if on average we're looking at, let's see, 1 divided by the average conversion rate, we're looking at 14 clicks on average to generate a sale. Then we say 43 divided by 14. That means we're only really going to have 4 or 3 orders off of this $40. My guess is 3 orders per day for advertising. Like this is even if everything is working well. And my guess is it's not working well if the product price is too high. And so in these cases, again, you're kind of up against what the market has available, so that like whenever I'm approaching these situations, that's my goal, is just to say, all right, what is my conversion rate? What is my average cost per clicks? What does my market trends look like? Going back to evaluating the market, like where should I be? Where am I? What is possible given this budget? And then just lay it all out there. Your best advocate for, you know, when approaching any sort of issue is going to be just laying out the data and just taking a really good hard look at the numbers, because numbers don't lie. Now, going back to one of my very first answers to a question where someone said, hey, you know, what makes a good ad manager? What are you looking for? Is the communication aspect. So you never want to come at it, you know, at a problem with data and say like, all right, here's the data. Here's why everything is possible. Here's, you know, sorry, good luck, right? That's not a good solution. So you not only want to come with the data, you need to come with a solution. So the solution may be, hey, let's see if we can test and find lower cost per click keywords. Hey, is there anything we can do on price? Like, here's a couple ways we can attack the situation. You always want to have a game plan. You never want to just throw up your hands and say there's nothing I can do, because at that point, why are they even having you manage the ads? They're paying for solutions. So you want to make sure you come with them. All right, good question here. What's your take on this? If we already have an organic ranking of 5 for a keyword, but still pushing on it with sponsored product top of search to reach the top 3 position, can this lead to cannibalism? The answer is maybe. And the further answer to that is you just need to test. So what I would do, you look at it from 2 different lenses, I guess you would say. One is, what is the performance or what is the profitability of running this ad? If I'm highly unprofitable, then maybe I need to be a little bit worried about like cannibalization. If I'm very, very profitable, well, I'm not too worried about it at all. So I would say like, hey, am I losing money to run these ads? If I am, then maybe I should take a step back or at least look at it. And then the other thing that I would look at is like, is cannibalization actually there? Cannibalization is only ever apparent when pulling back on your advertising is not going to lead to a decrease in your rankings, or if you need to, again, pull back for performance reasons, meaning like this is making my account super unprofitable to run these ads. And so how would you do that? Well, if your goal is to push for the top 3 positions, I would say continue, because right, you're at 5, you haven't really achieved that. Now, if you continue to push on these ads and you're like, it's not really profitable right now, and you're finding that you're not really increasing anywhere in your ranking, you're just kind of stalled. In that case, I would say like, well, these ads are no longer helping me achieve the goals. And so I'm going to see if I pull back on my advertising, if I can maintain at the very minimum, I want to maintain like 5 or 6 spots. I don't want to see a drastic reduction in my ranking. Now, if you try that and you have a drastic reduction in your ranking, well, then you know that, okay, so I need to sustain this to sustain ranking. So I think what kind of gets lost in the cannibalism question is, will they click on your ads as well as your organic? And might they have only clicked on that organic placement if your advertising wasn't there? The answer could be yes, but the further, I guess, part of that overall like thought or equation or logic would be, if I do not have that advertising placement, can I maintain, position 4, position 5, position 3, or whatever it may be? So if the answer to that question, can I maintain my rankings without, this advertising, is no, meaning as soon as I pull back on advertising, I slip in rankings, well, then it doesn't matter if there's cannibalization or not, because I'm going to see negative impacts of pulling back. So even if they would click on my ads or they would click on my organic position, I still need that ad position to be able to sustain and make sure that I'm getting that organic placement. Almost cannibalization doesn't even matter there. Again, providing that your profit metrics are there. You never want to keep running ads, even if it sustains ranking, if like the product's not making any profit whatsoever. So that's the other part of the equation. But again, if you can pull back, if we don't have to spend on ads to be able to maintain that rank, then absolutely, why would we continuously spend on it? So I would say if everything is good, like profitability is there, you're fine with the A cost, you're seeing the increase in ranking, I wouldn't worry about the organic, providing, again, you're seeing the benefit from running those ads. All right, cool. I had another client, her book was really good, over 1,000 sales with 30 to 40% A cost monthly. She was complaining about rankings. Her book has around 150 reviews, but she was complaining about a competitor who only 10 reviews ranking better than her. I tried everything I know: SEO optimization, A+ content, most related keywords. I optimize on a daily basis. Now I run a category-based ad campaign. How can I improve that? Any thoughts? I would do a reverse ASIN search of the competitor and just see where they are ranking well and see if you can learn anything from them. Again, you want to focus in on keywords that you have really good conversions for and you have really good metrics for, because again, to gain that ranking and velocity, you need order velocity and you need positive signals to the algorithm, i.e. click-through rates, conversion rates. So make sure you're focusing in on that. Hi, with search query and POE being available, though not for all brands, is Helium 10 still relevant? Yes, it is. What you'll find is that a lot of times, even if you use brand analytics or search query performance reports, they'll only give you, I think it's like the top 100 to 1,000 keywords for those products, while Helium 10 is going to allow you to better do reverse ASIN search. I would use both. They're all tools in your tool belt. I wouldn't discount anything. So I would use all the tools at my disposal to make sure that brands are winning. All right. If an ad position is higher than a GAN position for a keyword, what should we do? For example, top of page, mid page one. Again, Keith, I wouldn't worry about it unless that ad is unprofitable and you need to make a change due to profitability. Again, this whole ad cannibalization, it does happen. And I mean, I've audited brands where I'm like, look, honestly, I think you should just pull back on your ads because you're super unprofitable. And here are some numbers and metrics that tell me that. And I think it is a case of cannibalization. But what I would say is that we found that it's not always a case of ad cannibalization, and you want to be factoring in the other aspects, meaning I need to push ads for ranking. And so I wouldn't overthink it. I would just make sure that I'm looking at the overall profitability performance of a product. All right. Hey, Elizabeth, what are the different ways to improve lifetime value and customer acquisition cost on Amazon? Definitely, if you have a replenishable product, you want to have subscribe and save. And subscribe and save coupons and things are a fantastic way to identify customer lifetime value. Also, like if you have a bunch of subscribe and save, or if you have a bunch of repeat purchases or things, you'll actually see that show up in your total A costs. And so that if as long as you're tracking total A costs in these cases, you can make sure that you're actually spending on ads efficiently, and it will factor in the lifetime value. Is the profit forecast sheet available for use? Yes, it is. However, I will have to pull up. I'll see if I can pull it up for you. Give me a second and I will drop the link in the comments. However, if I don't find it, you can reach out to me in any of the socials and I'll make sure to send it over with you. For the lower volume relevant keywords that are ranked around 15 to 25, A cost is near break even for these. Would you increase PPC bids be worth it to try and increase rank? I would, if they're lower volume, I would selectively choose ones that you want to see if you can increase rank on, because if you're going after ranking, you want to make sure that you're tracking your ranking in some way. And then if you are tracking your ranking, you want to just correlate like, hey, am I increasing your ranking? Yes, no, maybe so. And then make sure you're adjusting accordingly. And one other thing that you could do is if you're ranked around 15 to 25, let's see, lower volume, depends on how low the volume is. Like, because the search volume, which by the way, all tools are a good quality guesstimate as to search volume. So they're not always going to hit it 100% right. But what you want to do is I would just gauge again, does it make sense for me to go after these in terms of ranking? And then if it does make sense, then again, push, track, make sure it's working for you. And working as in you're seeing the increase in ranking. But the other thing that you could do is if you're on 50 to 25 and you're okay with where you are, you could actually, if you're at break even, you could try even pulling back a little bit and seeing if there's any difference in terms of drops in ranking. Again, you want to make sure you're tracking here, but that could be another way to keep a little bit of coin as well. And again, the impact you're going to see from organically ranking on those keywords is dependent on search volume, because if there's only like 5 searches a month, it doesn't matter if you show up like very top position in search, you only have 5 potential buyers a month versus something that has like 2,000, right? 2,000 potential buyers a month. So I would say it's kind of relative. Or the cheapest, fastest way to get more outside traffic to my listing. Well, the cheapest would be if you have any sort of brand following anywhere. So if you have a newsletter, if you have an Instagram page you've been building up, if you have like any sort of organic socials, that's going to be the cheapest. And then you just try and run some deals or see if there's a way to direct that traffic to Amazon. Now, probably one of the, outside of free, probably one of the best channels that we've seen, and it's not always universal, is oftentimes like Google advertising can be a really great way to push for external traffic. So it's a bit relative in terms of what you can expect for that. Anyways, I appreciate the question. So if anyone has a follow-up question, let me know. So the format of this is use the chat to drop your Amazon advertising questions, and then I'll make sure that you all can get the best answer possible for that. Otherwise, we'll see. We have about 10 minutes left, so we've got a lot of questions towards the end of this. Again, looking forward to, let me just share this link as well where you guys can make a copy of this. So if anyone wants access to this sheet, which by the way, I'll pull it up again. So we were going through, there's this goal right here, which again, gives you a demo if you want like a specific profit goal, or if you have a specific like percentage of ad goals that you want to look at. But there's also ways where you can essentially build out a forecast P&L to say at what point do I get profitable? Am I profitable for this? And then, what does that profitability look like? At what point, you could build out like a 12-year projection on this. Like, where would I be in terms of actual goals and sales if this works? And again, you have a sheet demo that'll go through everything and kind of explain it, because you can actually look at what's your target CPC given my specific total ACOS goals here, which I think it's probably pretty helpful for most people here to see like cost per click broken down all the way to a target ACOS level. So been working on some interesting forecasts. Make sure that you stay tuned for those. Keith has a question about links should be provided for an influencer. What I will say is that I'm not as familiar with those links, but there will be inside of the ad console, there's a way that you can generate like specific links, or I think there's a way to do like coupon links and tracking. So you definitely want to make sure if you're going to do it, you want to track. Zane asking about what is the buzz about AMC? AMC, Amazon Marketing Cloud, has insane granularity breakdowns when it comes to analyzing the shopper journey, their interactions with your ads. You know, there's a lot of questions like, okay, if they click on my sponsored product ad, if they click on my sponsored brand ad, you know, if they come from DSP, how do those things work together? How many clicks does somebody need to make a purchase? If I follow up with them, are they purchasing? All of those questions can be answered with AMC. Now, not the problem with AMC, but I would say the difficulty is the fact that you need to know like SQL and how to query like databases, and it's not as easy as like, you know, you have pre-reports you can just like pull out. It really requires a bit more involvement, but the insights that you can pull out of it are pretty insane. All right, may I get the forecast sheet or know a little bit about? Okay, cool. Yeah, so the forecast sheet looks like you're watching on LinkedIn. Unfortunately, the way LinkedIn works is if I post something, it won't actually post the link in the live because I can't post from StreamYard to LinkedIn. So actually, feel free to shoot me a message on LinkedIn and I will get you the link where you can download the sheet. So I'll definitely make sure that you can get access to it. It's just the only reason you can't see the link right now. If you're watching on YouTube or any of the other places, you would definitely be able to see it. Awesome. After that, how you feel in the banana costume? I'm feeling a little bit overstimulated at this point. I'm not gonna lie. That's a bit itchy, but you know what? Here we are. I noticed a glitch in the campaign manager recently. It keeps getting, yes, I have seen, there's a lot of things in like cookies keep getting like having issues. Like it'll say like it won't be able to load and, you know, like for stuff not available or it won't load the graphs and everything. I've seen a lot of that. And to be honest, it's quite obnoxious. What I found is like I'll try and refresh the page. If I can't refresh or like if refreshing the page doesn't work, sometimes I'll choose like a different date range and then refresh the page, see if that works. And if that doesn't work, what I'll do is I'll delete the specific cookies for that browser and then reload again, and that tends to work. It is good to rely most on sponsored brand ads or just for a short period of time. That's a good question, Gregor. So I just answered a question earlier where they were asking about like, does sponsored brands have an impact on ranking? And so I was sharing a scenario or some observations that we've had is that sponsored brands video, sponsored display don't typically have as big of an impact on ranking as sponsored product ads. So what I would say is if you perform best in sponsored brand ads and your only goal is just to make sure that you have a good ROI, well, then run sponsored brands video ads all day long, because if that's where you're going to have the best ROI. Now, if your goal is to make sure that you are maintaining organic market share, i.e. good ranking on search pages, then you do want to make sure that you have a healthy amount of spend inside of sponsored product ads. Now, how I've observed this happening is actually a little while ago, shortly after Sponsor Brands video came out, I audited 3 to 4 accounts that all of them were primarily spending on sponsored brands video ads. So it looks like most of your sales rely mostly on sponsored brands ad, not much success on sponsored product ads. My guess on that as to why you're having better success with sponsored brands video is most likely the fact that sponsored brands video tends to have a higher conversion rate and also a higher click-through rate, which means that ACoS tends to be a little bit lower, and you can offset maybe not so great performance. Most likely what's happening in sponsored product ads is that just you don't convert as high. So what I would say is if you're happy with where your account is right now, you're happy with the ads, you're happy with your organic market share, then I would say read your own numbers. And as much as you may want to like listen to me or somebody else and be like, is this a problem? If you don't see a problem in your current numbers, meaning you're not having any issues growing total sales, you see pretty good ranking on keywords, and again, you're overall happy with the way that things are going, I would say you're totally fine to continue. But what I will say is if you find that you're struggling to rank on search pages, if you really are struggling to maintain any sort of market share, and just overall you might have seen traffic slipping in recent times, then I would say in those cases you probably would want to revisit the sponsored product ads and see if there's any way where you can leverage those just for ranking purposes mainly. Low bid autos are great for this. Low bid broad matches are great for this if you find that conversion rate is lower. Is it possible to solely rely on organic ranks for sales? Completely shut off PPC? It is, if and only if your organic sales are able to have a higher sales and order velocity and conversion rate than your competitors. So here's the scenario. Product A, brand A, is only relying on organic. Product B is has organic and advertising running. Well, the way that ranking works is it basically looks at all of the orders that are coming through that one specific search page. It's factoring in your organic and your advertising. So if you only have organic orders coming in, and brand, even if you're making the same amount in terms of organic orders, but your competitor is making through organic orders and they have advertising orders that are coming in, then they will outrank you. And so if everyone is leveraging advertising, it can be a little bit hard to sort of keep up. I have seen products that are able to keep up, but what I will say is that you really have to have like the most stellar product possible, and your conversion rates have to be amazing, and you really have to be able to outpace everybody else. And that's harder and harder to do given the competition on Amazon. And so what I would say, the best thing to do in these cases, if you are running advertising and you're trying to pull back and you want to see if that's going to be effective for you, I would recommend pretty much never just turning everything off and seeing what happens. You would want to like pull back on your advertising. The best way to pull back incrementally is just going to be lower your ACoS targets. There's a lot of people who will like, oh, if my ad placements here, like what bid do I need to have it a little bit lower? I would just slowly walk back my ACoS goals. So if I'm running my advertising at say like a 30% ACoS, I would start targeting 27% ACoS, maybe 26, like slowly incrementally lower, which will naturally, if you're lowering ACoS and you're adjusting bids for low ACoS, you will be lowering your bids. It's just the way any bid strategy works. So if you're slowly lowering the ACoS goals from where you are to where you want to be, then you will naturally slowly lower your bid. So that's a really good like mass scale way to do it. And then just make sure that you don't have impact on total sales. Because if you do have impact on total sales, then you need to like get more aggressive, i.e. increase your ACoS targets. So I would just test it. Saying makes sense because Amazon has so many ad placements on top of search. Yes. And like, it's not just the ad placements on like in the search grid. Think about it. You have the banner ad. You maybe have one or two organic spots, but there's a ton of top of search. And then what do you have? You typically have some sort of widget that says like 4 stars or above, or, like our top ranked products or something. Those are ad placements, right? So there's a big ad placement. Then you have the video ad. Then you have, maybe 1 or 2 other widgets, some more people, places in the search grid. So there's just a lot less organic placements nowadays. And so for that, it's kind of a necessity to run advertising. As much as it's not really great for sellers, it really kind of has become a pay to play platform in a lot of ways. Gregor saying rank lower than my direct competitors, but I see good sponsor brand volume sales. Thanks for the feedback. Yeah, I would say, Gregor, I mean, if you're happy with where you are, performance is great, sales are great, then I would say always go with data. You're fine to continue. But again, if you want to test it, feel free to go through and test sponsored product ads if your goal is to like be more intentional, maybe about ranking on specific search pages. So with that, I think we are at the end of this segment. I appreciate everyone joining for a very special Halloween Amazon advertising Q&A session. If you like what you hear, feel free to give us a thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe so you can get notified every single time that we go live. And I really appreciate everybody staying till the end and listen. You can always catch all of the replays, by the way. Probably the best place to watch them is on YouTube. We also publish this out as a podcast if that's your choice in terms of listening. And with that, I will see you all next week. I believe we're going to be moving it to Wednesday instead of Thursday because we had a conflict. But either way, I will catch you all in the next one. Thank you so much.
And that wraps up this episode of the Ask Junglr Amazon Advertising Podcast. I hope you found these insights and strategies helpful in your Amazon PPC journey. Remember, if you have a burning Amazon ad question that you'd like answers to, head over to junglr.com/live to join our next live Q&A session. Until next time, keep optimizing those ads and stay hungry.